Hello and welcome to episode 80 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria and you can find me on both Ravelry and Instagram as Stitched in Sweden. Today I am coming to you from a drizzly fall day in Stockholm, and I wanted to share with you a couple of the things that I have been making recently and some projects that I have upcoming. The past couple weeks, months have been a lot of baby sewing, as you can imagine. I have been making lots of baby clothes, which I shared a lot of last episode. I've also made a quilt and some kind of more practical things as well. So I'll show you a couple of them today. And I have a project that I made for myself, which I think I'll start with that. So let's just jump right in. I actually just finished last night this sweater, which is not blocked yet, but I have just steam ironed it, and so or steam blocked it with the iron, which I like to do even sometimes when I'm in the middle of a project. There's something really satisfying about having all of your stitches evened out, and if you use your iron on a low heat, being careful, if you're working with 100% wool, you can do this, or if you have some acrylic or nylon content in there, you just want to make sure that you have it on a really low heat to start out with. And I usually just use some steam in there, and it can give you a nice preview of what your garment or whatever you're working on will look like once it is blocked and finished, if you're going to then in the end wet block it, so get it all soaking wet and then lay it out flat to dry. So anyway, all that to say that this is just steam blocked. I have not soaked it and laid it out, but I knit this sweater in about 2 weeks, so it was quite a quick project, and I think it went quite fast because I was holding 2 strands of yarn double, and so it was, even though it's sort of a fingering weight sweater, you could say it's knit at more of a sport or DK weight gauge. I think I ended up knitting this with the body part with a US size 6, which is a 4mm needle. And I knit this using Hey Sister Yarn Co. in the Pure Base, in the latte color. This is the tag. So I had bought 3 skeins of the latte color because I was planning on making a fingering weight sweater. But then actually when I held it double with Fruitvale Beret, this one. Fruitvale Beret is a Swedish dyer. This tag has lots of fuzz on it because this is the mohair. So her mohair base is called fuzzy mohair, and it's 72% kid mohair and 28% silk, and it's 420 meters per 50 grams. And I actually have a little bit left, so I will show you. I was a bit worried. I only had 2 skeins of the mohair, and I had 3 of the Hey Sister yarn, so I thought that it might be close to squeak the whole sweater out of basically 2 skeins of each, because you're holding them double, but I managed to do that with some left over. So this is the Hey Sister yarn latte, and then this is the mohair. So when I bought the mohair, I bought them both online, but I bought the mohair after I already had the latte, and I was a little bit worried when I got it that it was too yellowy. But they actually mixed really nicely together and made this kind of creamy neutral color that I think turned out really nice. So I knit this from the bottom up, and I actually started with the sleeves to avoid the sleeve island, second sleeve syndrome situation, but also because I knew that since I was doing it from the bottom up, that once I got to the arm separation, I would want to have the sleeves ready so that I could do that part and then, or connect them and then basically do the upper chest part and upper back, and then it would be finished. So that's what I did. Started with the sleeves. I did a tubular, so this isn't a pattern. I originally planned on basing it off of the penny sweater, which is from Tin Can Knits, which is just a v-neck sweater, but it has a all over lace pattern. But then in the end I just made it up because there were enough things that were different from that sweater that I wanted to change, and yeah, it just made more sense to use my gauge to kind of figure out the numbers. And then I have enough experience with knitting sweaters that I had an idea of how the construction would work and that kind of thing, so it worked out. But yes, I started with a tubular cast on for the cuffs and also for the bottom hem, which is my preferred cast on method. I also planned to do that for the bind off here on the neckline, but when I did it, it just wasn't turning out how I wanted it to. And so you can see that I have this, the decreases here that create a straight line basically with how I did them, and then also with where I picked up the neck stitches you get a line here, and so I thought that it still worked well to have that line kind of echoed here with just a regular bind off. So that's what I ended up doing. Also on the back neck, how I picked it up, you also have a line. So I thought that it just kind of tied it all together. I did some short row shaping at the back and kind of up on the shoulders to bring it up a little bit more. And yeah, it's pretty much, I based it off of the measurements from a cashmere sweater from Banana Republic that I have two. I have a gray one and a black one, and I wear them all the time in the colder months. So I like the fit of those, and since I'm pregnant now, I couldn't really try on as I go. I knew that I liked the fit of those sweaters before, so I decided to go with those measurements, and I hope that this will become kind of a staple like those two sweaters are in my wardrobe. They're also v-necks, just straight body, which is something that I did differently from my no frills. So my no frill sweater, which is also a mohair merino held double, I did some waist shaping, but this one, when I looked and was comparing my store-bought sweaters that I have that are similar to this what I was going for here, they don't have any waist shaping, so I decided that I would try that for a little bit. I want to say like it's a little bit different, but it's not really different because I wear those sweaters all the time. But usually in my hand knit sweaters I tend to do waist shaping, and this time I did not. So here it is, and I'm not gonna try it on because I have a belly in the way. It still does fit over kind of, but it looks a little funny, so we'll save that one for later in the winter. So that is the main thing that I made for myself. I have something that I'm sewing for myself as well that I'll show you in a minute, but I'll show you this cute little thing that's also a mohair and merino held double, which I finished a couple weeks ago. This is the teddy bear sweater from Petite Knit, and I kind of think that I knit the smallest size, but I do think it came out kind of large. I didn't measure my gauge, so I don't think that I did. I don't remember, honestly. It was a little while ago. But I figured it will fit her at some point, so we'll go for it. I knit this in also Fruitvale Beret, but the Fruitvale Beret this time was the fingering weight yarn, the merino, which is, it was part of a fade that I had from her, and I paired that with some commercial, so not hand-dyed merino that I think I have another wall of it, so okay. I only have one in pink, but it's this is the yarn that I used, and I held it with, so I only have this pink one, but this, in this sweater, it's actually kind of a light brown taupe, sort of like mousy color. But I do like how this one came out, and originally I had made the face with this yarn here, which I thought matched nicely in terms of like a color scheme, but when I made the face with this color, it was just not high enough contrast, so it didn't really show up. So then I picked a maroon yarn that I had to embroider the face on there. So for this sweater, I also did tubular cast on for the neck, and then bind off for the sleeves and for the bottom hem, because this one's knit top down in raglan with like a raglan shaping. So there's that little sweater. So I hope we will both be cozy and warm this winter. I think we will. Yes, so that is all that I've been knitting. I have a sweater that I really want to make, but the pattern isn't out yet. So we've done a bit of rearranging. So now my desk is actually, I have the camera sitting on my sewing desk here, which is now in the living room. Before, I used to just podcast with the camera on the windowsill and just sitting next to the couch. So the couch is right next to me here, faces that way. But I think you're seeing maybe a little bit more of my cabinet that has my yarn and some fabric in it now, because my sewing desk used to be in our second bedroom, but now we are setting up the second bedroom for the baby when she comes in December. So I'm out of breath. What I was gonna say is that I have a sweater that I really want to knit, but the pattern is not out yet. And this is by a Finnish designer. I think her name is Sari, and maybe it's Sari_N on Instagram. She has a pattern coming out apparently in mid-September, which is only a couple days away, so I really hope it's on schedule to come out, that I'm planning on knitting, which is a beautiful all-over cable crew neck pullover, and just the first time I saw it, I said, yep, I gotta knit that. So I am sadly, or I don't know, not so sad, going to be frogging my Divide sweater, which, that's the back, here's the front, which I pretty much stalled on. So I knit most of this, I mean, it's pretty, but this has been sitting in its bag for months now. I knit most of this in November last year. It's a little wonky because it's been folded in a bag, but it's basically an all-over twisted rib sweater. And I have knit that much of, I don't know if that was the front or the back. And then I have the full other part, which I think is the back or the front. So it's a lot of knitting. And no sleeves, so that's what I have. I also have other random things in here. Cords. And I'm knitting this in, I have been knitting this in Arbor, which is a Brooklyn tweed yarn in the Degas color, which is a, I would say beige, but I really hate that word. It's kind of creamy, like, yeah. It's actually pretty similar to Latte. Okay, like really similar. But this one is definitely more yellow, and then also with the mohair it becomes more yellow, and this one is more kind of grayed, beigey, slightly pinkish, but not really. So I kind of just have fallen out of love with this sweater. It's not the easiest, or it's not the most comfortable thing to knit because it's twisted rib. So for me, twisted rib, it just, anytime that I'm doing ribbing, actually one by one ribbing, if I'm doing it over and over and over for a large period of time or for a big stretch of a project, it's not very comfortable for my wrists, which now I've basically done the whole part pretty much that's in the ribbing. But I think I got a little bit stalled on this because I could tell from the project pictures, basically most of the projects that people have done, and then also from the sample knit that was done for the original pattern, the shoulders look really too tight to me. And I think it's a raglan shaping. I think maybe the arm like depth, I don't know if it's really the arm depth, but like the length from here to here, like this part of the arm, is maybe too short. So it just always kind of looks like it doesn't really fit anyone that well. I think that's kind of why I sort of have stalled on this project, because I'm right about at that point where I need to do the shaping for the, I think this is the front, where I need to do the raglan shaping. And then I know then at that point I knew that I was going to be doing the sleeves, and I was most likely going to have to modify them in order to give them some more space there, more fabric on the sleeves so that they would fit better, and so it wouldn't like pull the raglan out to the side. Anyway, the main thing is that I just am kind of done knitting this sweater. I want to move on to something else, and this yarn is going to be perfect for this cabled sweater that's coming out soon. So I think my plan today is going to be to rip this out, wind it up, soak it so that yarn is all relaxed and ready to go. I still have quite a few, these are 50-gram balls of yarn, which I have quite a few of them that are wound up and ready to use, so if the pattern comes out tomorrow I can cast on. Which is also why I really wanted to finish my V-neck mohair sweater so that I could start this one right away. I kind of like to have only one sweater project going at a time, because otherwise I just feel like I don't make any progress. So that's that. It's kind of sad when you put in a lot of knitting time, but that project served its purpose for me while I was knitting it, and I think I'm ready to move on from it and try something else. So I'll be sure to let you know what maybe the pattern does have a name. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'll be sure to update you on that next time, or on Instagram or something. So I'm excited for that. And I think it's a really classic kind of design. Again, all over sort of cable pattern that I think will be just a sweater that you wear forever. So that's what I want to do next. So that is what I've been knitting. I think maybe I've knit a couple pairs of socks for the baby also since last time, but I don't have them with me. I used the newborn sock pattern from Tabby, who's half of Hey Sister. It's a free pattern on her Ravelry page, so if you're interested in some baby socks, you can check that out. Just stubbed my toe. Ouch. Okay, so one of the I knit these baby socks, which are really cute. I think they're just little. I used her pattern sort of for the heel and the toe, I think, but I made these with a 3x1 rib, and I think that I also lengthened them by a bit, and I might have added some extra stitches, I don't remember, but it's basically a standard sock pattern that is just with less stitches. So these, and the reason why I decided to go get these is because these are kind of part of a little outfit. Last time I was knitting these, what are they called? Tights. And I finished them. I think they're just really cute. So I needed to add the elastic in the waist, which I did. They look kind of funny because the elastic sticks out wider than the tights themselves, but they stretch a lot. So you could imagine when you have a little diaper butt in here that they're gonna be stretched out, and then the waist doesn't look so weird because it's, yeah. So these are in Norwegian only, and the pattern is in Norwegian. And I think it could be possible to use Google Translate if you don't know Swedish, or I think I was able to understand the Norwegian only pattern because I know Swedish, and even with some Google translating on some parts, it's a little bit tricky because I think this style of, I don't know if it's European pattern writing in general, or if it's just in contrast to more of an American style of pattern writing, which I think tends to be very much step by step exactly what you have to do, much more hand holding through the whole thing. And in my experience with Swedish and Norwegian and Danish patterns, they expect that you have a little bit more of a base knowledge of knitting, but also kind of some intuition when it comes to certain parts. So it's not spelled out 100%. Also, because it was a Norwegian pattern, you can't just like plug it into Google Translate because some abbreviations or little words that make sense for a knitter, Google doesn't understand. So it's a bit tricky, but if you really wanted to, I think you could figure it out. There might be another kind of legging pattern, but basically this is a 3x1 rib legging, tights, not legging, because they have this little feet. And so my idea is that, so our baby is going to be born, she's due, scheduled, she's not scheduled, she's due in mid-December. So it's gonna be cold for a while when she is born, especially because we live in Sweden. But I made this cute little romper, which is very summery. But I made it in, this one is, I think, the smallest size. I think this is the newborn size. And I thought that this would be really cute paired with these little tights, and then also even with these socks over. So she may have this little outfit. There's snaps on the bottom here. Let's just stick those tights up there, and then, yeah, I don't know if you get an idea what I was thinking there. Ugh. So yeah, I think that's gonna be pretty cute. So even if it is going to be cold when she's born, I think layers like this will work well. So this is kind of transitioning into this part. I've made 2 of these rompers now. So that's kind of, this is kind of the end of the knitting section, and talk now about some sewing. I have a couple of baby projects and then one project for me. So I'm pretty sure that this is called the Ruffle Romper by Oh Me Oh My Sewing, or it's either Oh Me Oh My or it's Ooh La La Sewing or something like that. She has a shop on Etsy, and this, yeah, is the newborn size. Basically it's a little bodice with a ruffle inserted on there, and the edges are all finished with bias binding. So the neckline and then also the sleeves, and I have some gold snaps on the back, which then all the inside seams I finished with my serger overlocker, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, it just has a ruffled waist and kind of like bloomery bottoms with some elastic on the leg holes, and then snaps also at the bottom. And then I just used regular press snaps, not the gold ones. So I think this with like a long sleeve, like white long sleeve onesie, those little gray tights, it's just gonna be a cute winter outfit. And then if it happens to fit her when it's a little bit warmer, it will also work for then. But I think it's mostly, the idea is for winter. Then I made one that's a little bit bigger, and this one is more of a spring summer romper, which also can be layered with different things. And this one is in 100% linen, and again has the stretchy legs. It's the same pattern, but maybe it's a little bit easier to see the design lines of this pattern in a solid fabric. And this one also has a little bias binding on the edges. So those 2 were super fun to make. I mostly previously had been doing only stretch clothes, so like with jersey fabrics, as I showed you before. But it's really fun to use these cute little prints or just a small amount of fabric for a little woven project, and they come together pretty fast. So you can see the size difference. They're actually quite similar, but the pink one is definitely larger. So those are those 2 projects. the next thing that I finished is actually a quilt. So I have always planned on making a baby quilt, basically. I've made a baby quilt for a friend. I've made a quilt for Thomas and I for our wedding. I made us a quilt, and so it only made sense also to make a baby quilt for us. I wanted to go with something that was, well, now that I have this all on my lap, let me just kind of also talk you a little bit through my process with designing this quilt and planning it out, because I did something a little bit different than I usually do, and I really enjoyed the whole process of it, so I will talk you through it. So originally I had a fat quarter bundle of fabrics that I had bought a while ago with the idea that they would most likely someday be incorporated into a quilt, and maybe a quilt for a child or a baby, or they were this line, these blue ones here, came from that. These little owls, which are upside down for you, but this fabric came from that. This fabric came from that, and it has some kind of cute little patterns. This little fabric, this one with the little girl there, came from that. So anyway, I had this bundle which had navy, the mustard yellow, kind of whites, a kind of creamier pink, and yeah, that's basically it. So I had that as sort of a starting point. And I originally was thinking about making a quilt that incorporated the bundle with some solid background colors, most likely an off-white kind of cream color. But then as I started, it wasn't exactly what I wanted, because I sort of, there was one of the prints in the bundle that I didn't like as much, which was this one here. It's a little bit too, I don't know, strong. I just didn't feel like it went super well with all the other parts of it. So I wanted to use less of that, and then I started looking for some other similar fabrics in my stash that I had that might kind of replace that. And then I started just pulling out a lot of scraps that I had and realizing that if I kind of stuck to a certain palette of colors that were already in this bundle, that I could kind of incorporate a lot of scraps that I had that were from different projects or from different places that I have traveled, or yeah, just different kind of memories connected to them, and that it could be fun to actually have a quilt project that was a little bit less structured and like only from one collection of fabric, and be a little bit more free with it, because yeah, I don't know. So I basically made, I drew out how I wanted the quilt to look, which, are you gonna be able to see that at all? Nope. Okay, well, oh yeah, there. So I drew it out in pencil. These, I knew that I wanted to use flying geese. And then with a piece of parchment paper, like from baking, I just taped this on to my notebook, and then I traced the triangles, because I was planning on that maybe I was going to need to do multiple versions of this colored in version. Like if I wanted to change the position, try colors in a different setup, which is why I didn't just draw directly on my paper, but I also kind of just like this little flap. So I drew out where I wanted the triangles to be, where I sort of wanted the colors to be, so that I could get kind of a better feeling and a even sort of distribution of the colors. And yeah, I basically decided that I was going to stick with the palette of having some dark blue and then lighter blues with patterns in them. Same with the pinks, there's like the dark pink and then there's a lighter pink, and then the mustard was mustard, and then there's also some kind of yellowy beige colors in here as well. And that was like my idea, and that some of the background squares would have some, I think it's called, when it's like low volume, means like it's not a totally solid white square, but maybe it has a little subtle design in like this sort of chicken wire grid, or even I use this as one of my like low volume background colors, which is supposed to be like the background of the quilt. So I'll give you a full view of the project here. Chair. There we go. So there. I don't know if you see the whole thing, but that's about as much as I can show you. So there we go. This is my full wingspan basically, and when I'm holding it now, it goes down to my knees. So I think it's a good size. I think it will be a good size for like in a bed eventually, but also just like having on the floor as kind of a playing area or sleeping. This is the back is all in this kind of grid pattern, the fabric, and then also this is just wrinkly because yeah, also the stitching lines. I just decided to keep it really simple with the stitching, and I just sewed like these grid lines. So I'll show you. It's kind of hard to show a whole quilt, but we can just start on this little corner here, and then you can also see the binding. So the binding I picked also kind of incorporated some of these pinks and a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue. The blue ended up being a little bit more turquoisey than I was expecting in the binding, but it still goes, I think, with the overall look of the quilt. And I think it's really fun because I was able to use some fabrics in this that, like I said, are kind of connected to different projects or different places. I like this little scene with the bunny, the balloons. So like I used some of this for a lining that I made for my bridesmaids. I made some leather bags and they had this on the inside and some of them had this on the inside. So that was like kind of just a fun thing to incorporate in there. These little sheep came from my friend Elena. My sister got me this fabric a long time ago. One of the first, was it a dress? I made a project bag for my mom out of this fabric. This is some Rifle Paper Co. fabric that's actually from the quilt that I made for Thomas and I for our wedding. I have some more recent fabrics too, like this is from the little romper that I showed you that I made recently. Some of these solid colors are from the baby quilt that I made for my friend. So anyway, there's just some fun fabrics that are in here, which made this a really nice project, both to do, but also I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it's fun to look at the different sections. This also I bought in Oregon when I was visiting my friend. So lots of different things in there connected to different times of my life, different places. And I just love a quilt when it's all washed and done and binding is finished. So that was a long talk about the quilt, but I then also used this drawing that I had done. So if you notice these little arrows in here, basically to construct the quilt I made these little flying geese triangle pieces. So each one of those was a separate rectangle. So there was a rectangle with a triangle in it, and that was like one piece, and then I would sew it together so there would be two. And then that square would be the same size as one of like the blank squares that would be just one solid fabric. So eventually, after I had done all of the triangle pieces and sewn them together, I started sewing together 4 sections at a time, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Those 4 would be together, and then I would sew it together with these 4, then these 4, etc. And then I would sew a big line, the top line, to the next section of 4. And so these little arrows I used to show myself which direction I should press the seam. Because when you're sewing a quilt, one of the things that you can do is, if you press the seams to one side, I'm going to describe this. If you press the seams to one side for one piece, and then on the piece that you're sewing to it, if the seam presses to the other side, then when those 2 seams come together, you'll have the bulk from one side on one direction and the bulk from the other side on the other direction, so the seam comes together in a much nicer way. And it's flatter, less bulky, and it just makes for a smoother construction, and I think it makes it more accurate as well, because the edges can be more precise because you can like kind of scoot them up to each other easier. That makes no sense, but yeah, that's why I have all those arrows on this image, just to show myself which direction I was pressing so that I could be consistent and have the piecing together come out easy. So yeah, that's the quilt. Another project that I've been working on just in the past week or so is a dress, and this is a pattern for myself. I mean, the dress will be for myself. We are attending a wedding in October. My plan is to make a floor-length dress in this navy velvet, and this is a stretch fabric. The idea is that it will be a little bit forgiving for my growing body. But I've so far have made the bodice. I've made two versions of the bodice, and this is the one that fits best. I based this off of the Stacia dress It's Statia. I don't think I have a picture of the dress, but I don't know if I've ever shown you a dark green dress that I made, which has like short sleeves, nicely fitted bodice, and then it has just like a kind of, it's kind of like a skater dress, I think it's called. But it has, now you can see my belly, but on the Stasis pattern, the front seam kind of goes like this in a triangle, and then there's a seam down the front of this sort of, not super full, but also kind of swirly skirt. So I liked the fit of that bodice. I liked how it fit in my shoulders. So I decided to use that bodice piece to base my dress pattern off of. And because it also had different sleeve length options. So the things that I changed, so this is the bodice, this is the front. You can see it has, it's quite a high, I mean, it's a higher neck. And then on the back, it has a scoop back. So you can see why I call the front a high back, a high front, I mean. So there's a scoop back, and then I did the 3/4 length sleeves from the pattern, but I lengthened them by about 2 inches, 5 centimeters or so. And in the pattern, the neckband and the cuffs for the sleeves are finished with, actually I don't know if the cuffs are, but at least the neckband is, the neck is finished with a neckband that's similar to like on this dress, which I did not make, but where it's like sewn on separately. But I thought that might be a little bit bulky with the velvet. I hadn't sewn with velvet before and I wasn't sure how that was gonna work, and also I think it's a little bit of a casual finish. So I wanted to try to figure out a more kind of formal way to, I don't know if that makes any sense, to finish the neckline. So what I ended up doing actually is, first I tried doing a bias binding on the neckband and finishing it off with that, but I used a satin binding, this binding, which I just had left over from something else. But this is a woven binding, and this is a knit fabric, or stretch fabric at least, and it just was it didn't work. I think it would have worked if I hadn't had such an extreme scoop on the back, but it just was too tight and it didn't lay flat and it just didn't work. So what I ended up doing was just overlocking the edge of the dress, of the neck, and then I just folded it over once. So I did an overlock and then I just folded it over and top stitched from the front. So it's just one line of top stitching quite close to the edge, and it worked out really well. So I scooped out the back deeper than the pattern for the Stasia dress, and I made the front less scooped than in the pattern, but I still kind of based it off of that. But I also I basically changed everything, but it was still a good starting point to have that bodice. But I also changed the waistline so that it's straight across rather than having that front point. And actually also now I did a kind of test run pinning on the skirt piece, the front skirt piece to the bodice while I was wearing it. And I think that actually I will most likely, even cut the bodice so it's a little bit more like moon shaped rather than straight across, just to get the fit best. But I don't know, we'll see. I don't know how that will work, we'll see. So there's the bodice piece. It's going to have a quite full gathered skirt with it. So I took my full width of the velvet fabric and stitched some gathering stitches along one edge of it. So the width is this way. This was the length and this is the width of the fabric. And so I stitched those gathering stitches along the width, and so it's going to be full length. This will be half of the front, and then I'll have another piece like this for the back, obviously, which I still need to cut out. And then my plan is that I probably won't hem it until, well, I probably won't finish it till right before the wedding anyway. Now the wedding is coming up. But my idea was that I would make the front piece a little bit longer than the back piece so that I could hem it accordingly, because I still want it to be quite floor length, and if my stomach grows larger by that point, I don't want it to be like riding up in the front, if that makes sense. So I was gonna wait to hem it until right before, and then I figure I might be able to wear this afterwards as well if I ever need a floor length of navy velvet dress again. And I could just re-hem it straight. So, because the waist is like, sits right under my bust, it will be a very similar measurement when I'm not pregnant anymore. And because it's a gathered dress, it's the only fitted part is the upper part, and then the rest is looser. So I should be able to wear it afterwards too, if I have an occasion. So that's what I'm sewing. I might work on that today after I rip out my sweater. I'll just show you one last thing that I've sewn. This is the Sew Toots little pick-me-up, which is a baby carrier. And I will put it on for you so you can get a feeling for how it works. But basically, the strap clips in, and then this snaps on, buckles on, not snaps, but there's nice cushioned band here that's really structured. Yeah, you can adjust all of the straps and everything. There's different adjustments. You can see that it's buckled in the back there, across the back, and then obviously you put the baby in here, which right now she's already sitting in there. But imagine, yeah, you get the idea. This is the little hood that will be able to cover her. And yeah, so this is a labor of love, I would say. This is the second time that I've made this pattern. The first time I made it for my friend Elena. She had her baby last September. And that time I used a light gray fabric for the main under structural fabric. And then the decorative fabric was kind of a light pinkish purple that had, I think they were little bunnies with crowns on them and maybe a little umbrellas or something. It was quite cute. Or little clouds also, yeah. So for mine I decided to use a structured, this is a twill fabric, this dark green that I got from Stuff and Steel, and I got it in the remnants part, so it was a clip of I think I got it out of a meter. 1 meter, and it was 40% off since it was the last of the roll. And I actually had picked out that fabric that I wanted to use, and I had picked it out on the roll, but then I found the scrap piece, and so it was like, yes, meant to be. So I used that for the structural fabric, and then this is some quilting cotton, also from Stuff and Steel, but I think that it very much has like a Liberty of London kind of feel to it, which I quite like. So this is a labor of love, because sewing all of these, the straps and stuff make it look complicated. It's not the straps themselves that's the hard part, it's like dealing with this thick foam and having to sew through the foam and stuffing these these arm straps, stuffing the foam into the strap is just a nightmare. You have to like wiggle it in there with a plastic bag and like squeeze it out, and it is quite a lot of work. So if you are planning on making one of those, it's So Toot Little Pick Me Up pattern is what I used. If you are making it for yourself and you are pregnant, do it earlier on, because it's quite a wrestling match with your sewing machine. This time, one thing that I did differently than last time, which helped a lot, is that I used the walking foot on my sewing machine. Previously I just used a regular presser foot, and the walking foot made it a lot easier, but it was still really challenging. It's not technically difficult, it's a lot of maneuvering and yeah, getting the pieces to be in the right place, and just, I don't know. It's worth it in the end, I think. I have one friend who so the friend who I made her carrier for, she said that was one of their favorite carriers and they used it all the time. And then my other friend who made one for herself, I don't think she ever used it. So I guess it's just whatever works for you in the end. I'll just show you one thing that I have planned for the near future, upcoming for sewing, and that is this little kind of snowsuit outfit. And this is a pattern from Stuff and Steel. I'm planning on doing this one that has the bear ears. So there's bunny, or kind of like cat style, and then little bear ears. I'm gonna do that one in size 62, which I think is kind of, yeah, 0 to 6 months or something. 3 to 6 months maybe. Yeah, so hopefully it will fit her when the first winter. I'm gonna make it out of a gray wool for the outer part, and then I'm going to do kind of this color pink jersey fabric for the lining. So I think that is up next after I finish my dress for myself. And then it will be a little bit of sewing here and there, but I actually have most of the things on my long list of things that I wanted to sew for the baby, which is somewhere in here. Most of them are finished. So I'll just cover up her name. I don't know. Nope, you can't really see. Anyway, my list, and there's lots of satisfying little check marks next to most things. So the gray and pink overall suit is left. Some little floral bloomers. I have some Liberty fabric that I'm going to make some, kind of basically the bottom half of this with an elastic band. Little short kind of things, and then I'm also going to make some diapers. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's all for now. I hope that you are enjoying your making, and yeah, I will talk to you again next time. Bye!